At just age 28, Nikola Jokic is already a champion, Finals MVP, and two-time regular season MVP who's accomplished statistical feats that you can't even find in a video game. The 6'11 center is most famous for his ability to pass the ball, running the offense and getting all of his teammates involved in a way that we've never seen from a big man. And because he's leaned into that playmaking so much, I think it's easy to forget that he might just be the most unguardable scorer in the NBA as well. Joker's attack starts with that dominant low post game, using all 284 pounds of his frame to establish deep position, sealing off his defender for quick and easy scoring moves. His decisiveness off the catch makes him nearly impossible to cover in these spots. On the initial entry, he's gonna volleyball tap it back out to the perimeter so that he can repost from a better angle. And on the second try, he turns over his right shoulder for a baby hook with the offhand. Here's another example, using his size to seal off Nick Claxton in the middle of the lane for a real easy entry, but this time he turns over his left shoulder only to fake the hook shot, which gets Claxton off his feet and sets up a potential three-point play. That quick decision making off the catch doesn't only apply to when he catches the ball with deep positioning. This time he's all the way out near the elbow, and as soon as he touches the ball, he's spinning into a drive. Naz Reid does a good job of closing that lane, so Jokic uses his body to work his way to the opposite side of the rim for a reverse finish. Here it is again. He's going to kick it out to Jamal Murray for a quick repost, and notice how he's positioned himself in a way that holds Kelly Olynyk on his left hip, leaving the baseline wide open. This is so that when he receives the entry, he can immediately spin over his right shoulder, leaving Olynyk in a pile of quicksand as he lays it in for two. The effectiveness of these sharp spin moves is all in perfect timing. Jokic has completely mastered the art of feeling out a defender and gauging when or where to turn his body, so he typically has no issue setting up a lane to attack. Once that lane has been created, then his touch as a finisher around the basket takes care of the rest. By spinning over his right shoulder, he gets the step on Ayton, but Durant and his 7'5" wingspan are right there to help. So he just does what any normal center would do and goes to a high-arcing, one-legged floater that drops in off the side of the rim. Jokic's length gives him access to unique finishing angles and crafty releases that wouldn't otherwise be there. On this one, it looks like Nurkic has done a good job of taking away any look at the basket off a spin, but the two-time MVP just extends his left arm as far as possible and scoops it off the glass with perfect accuracy. He's comfortable flicking the ball in at quite literally every possible wrist angle you can think of, which allows him to react and adjust his shot at will to counter whatever his defender does. This time Walker Kessler jumps backwards with 100% verticality in an attempt to meet the ball at its release point, so Jokic keeps it as high and far away as possible until the very last moment and tosses it in at an unblockable time. You'll see the same thing when he's going to his classic baby hook, using shoulder bumps to create separation before turning over either shoulder, and by fully extending that arm, he's able to sneak it over the outstretched contest of Brook Lopez with some feathery soft touch. Joker's touch around the cup might just be the best I've ever seen. At this point, it feels like no matter how difficult or awkward an attempt is, if it's leaving the hands of Jokic, it's going down for 2 points. Last season, he shot 75% at the rim, and he's been over the 70% mark for each of the last 3. And because he's capable of tossing it up and in at every possible angle, what he'll do is just keep twisting and turning as he hunts for a good look at the basket, and once he sees an opportunity, there's just nothing the defense can do about it. These types of plays are made possible by near flawless footwork. When perfect balance meets that much size, it pretty much gives him an unlimited set of counters. He turns over his left shoulder to set up a baby hook, but Bam reads the move and goes tall to take it away. So he moves the ball up and down to protect it while doing his best impression of a ballerina, and all that to set up that exact same initial baby hook he wanted to go to. This time he's backing down Montrezl Harrell, and instead of turning over his left to set up the hook, he's going to leverage that threat with a little half spin into a couple toe taps as he waits for the perfect moment to step across the lane, and then you again see that length as he wraps his arm around Harrell for a soft touch finger roll. Just like he can fake the left hand turn before spinning to his right, it works both ways. This time it's a half spin over his right shoulder that nearly buckles Bam and sets up a free 2 points. Let's run that one back real quick. I just want you to watch the footwork. It's easy to miss if you're not looking for it, but just look at how sharp it is. Moving with that much control at that size is absurd. So Jokic has the finesse game down, but because he's also one of the strongest and largest players in the NBA, he also has the power game, bullying his way to the front of the basket with ease. I talked about how he'll make quick moves off the catch. He can also play slow, patiently backing his way in, and again, feeling out his defender before getting into his score. You'll often see him use this technique where he uses his inside elbow to sort of hook the hip of his defender while turning over his shoulder, and that's a way for him to create some more separation. Here's another example, slowly working his way in close, using that elbow technique to turn over his right shoulder, and then that one-of-one touch takes care of the rest as he scoops it up and in with the inside hand. That unique combination of strength and touch allows him to finish through contact at will. It doesn't matter how much his defender tries to bother him through physicality or by getting handsy, he'll just keep throwing them big body bumps and playing through it as if he's just completely unfazed. What I will say though is that if you wanted to point out just one area of his scoring to nitpick, I'd say there are guys who are just straight up better at selling obvious contact or craftily drawing fouls, and because he has a tendency to just act like contact doesn't exist, you won't find those obscenely high free throw rates. He got to the line about 6.5 times every 75 possessions, which is a good but not quite elite mark, and the fact that you could point this out as one of his weaker points speaks volumes as to how ridiculous his arsenal as a post scorer truly is. Because of his strength, finesse, and finishing arsenal, he's pretty much always looking to get as close to the basket as he possibly can to set up the highest percentage opportunities. But if he's unable to get there, he can of course counter with that beautiful fadeaway jumper. You've got some versatility with the one-legged Sombor shuffle, the ability to turn over either shoulder, and he barely needs any breathing room at all because he's such a ridiculous difficult shot maker. And just like all of his other moves, he can counter out of these, or fake them to open up other opportunities, this time using the threat of his fadeaway to get Bam off his feet and stepping through for 2 free ones. Jokic led the NBA at about 6.5 points per game in the post, and was by far the most efficient of anyone in the top 15 in volume at 1.22 points per attempt. There's nothing he can't do with his back to the basket. He'll attack any type of defender from anywhere on the floor, the best post scorer the NBA's seen in a long time. And if the defense even thinks about bringing some extra help, he'll find a cutter or shooter for easy offense. In addition to the unguardable post game, Jokic is also a guy who can face up and isolate from anywhere inside the arc, and that's because he's such a good shooter that when paired with his size and high vantage point, he pretty much always has access to quality shots over the top of his defender. Last season, he actually led the entire NBA at an absurd 61% from the mid-range, and he did so at respectable volume, 7 attempts every 75 possessions. Again, even if a defender has the length needed to actually bother his shot, he's one of the game's best difficult shot makers, so this is something he can always fall back on. Actually, I could probably make an entire video just talking about the different BS shots he hit throughout last year's 20-game playoff run. If you're a fan of one of the 4 teams who stood in the path of Denver, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. End of the shot clock, off of one leg, getting fouled, it doesn't matter. Back to that face-up game, to create a bit more separation on these mid-range jumpers, he'll use jab steps and pivots to keep his defender guessing. And that's because he's also a threat to put the ball down and attack the basket. This time he jabs right before driving left, and once he gets to the front of the restricted area, he turns his back to throw a couple of those shimmying, fake spin moves, which gets Brook Lopez in the air and leaves him with space to turn into a classic hook. Another thing you'll see him do in these spots is actually use the threat of his passing to open up more scoring. When KCP cuts around him, he holds the ball high and fakes a pass to make AD bite, then uses that space to attack on a drive. And just one step is all he needs for one of those lengthy finishes. So his self-creation inside the arc is as good as it gets. He can operate out of the post, or when facing up, is the most efficient mid-range shooter on the planet, and has unrivaled touch around the rim. Yet we've barely scratched the surface. That's because what truly makes him a nightmare to cover is that he's just as lethal away from the ball. He's constantly looking for opportunities to catch his defenders sleeping or ball watching and shock them with a backdoor cut, and in general, he just doesn't stop moving. Not just that, but he's a massive moving target to hit with momentum, has the best hands I've ever seen, so he's going to catch everything thrown his way, and is such a quick decision maker off the catch that even if his initial angle gets taken away, there's just always a series of counters he can throw together to get whatever he wants. I mentioned that he has the best hands I've ever seen, and that really stands out when he's crashing the offensive glass, as he'll just tip, guide, water polo the ball every which way to set up second chance offense. The constant movement, large frame, and ability to seal off his man puts him in great position all the time, and he has phenomenal anticipation off the rim. The result? He's averaged 3.5 offensive rebounds a game over his last 3 playoff runs, and pretty much all of those result in an automatic putback for 2 points. Another thing you'll see Jokic do away from the ball is run off of screens in set actions like a wing, where he's a threat to score from all 3 levels. This is extremely weird and unorthodox because most bigs aren't used to navigating screens. It just isn't a tool they've had to develop. So when the 7-footer is coming off of pin downs for jumpers, it can be pretty confusing. Not just that, but again, he's super good at attacking off the catch or on the move and knows how to exploit space, this time using his momentum to throw a shoulder bump into the chest of Alex Len, almost sending him to the baseline, and that sets up an up and under move for a scooping finish. He also knows how to set up his man and run them into the screens through his off-ball movement. This time it's a cross screen, and by faking the backdoor with a jab and hand sweep, when Jamal flips it into a pin down, now Damian Jones is held in the paint. So when Jokic flares back out to the top of the key, he's left with so much time that he can take a rhythm dribble, set his feet, before dropping in a long-range bucket. Now feels like a pretty good time to mention that in addition to all-time rim finishing, all-time mid-range scoring, Jokic is one of the greatest three-point shooting bigs the game has ever seen. In just this most recent playoff run, he hit a staggering 46% of his threes. And if that isn't a big enough sample for you, he's hit 41% of his wide open threes since 2021. 3 years where he'll just abuse defenses that decide to leave him open. Like inside the arc, because of his size, he can comfortably shoot over contests or smaller defenders like they aren't even there. He's a legitimately elite outside shooter. This multifaceted off-ball scoring threat stands out most when Jokic is used as a screener. Most commonly, he's looking to get downhill and step into his signature floater. If you asked me to name the most unguardable shot in NBA history, Jokic's floater would be right at the top. Last season, he shot 64% from 3 to 10 feet, which among qualifying players was first in the NBA by a very wide margin. Being able to generate layup type efficiency from as far out as 10 feet really stresses defenses, and when his defender does a good job of picking up the ball in a pick and roll while also getting back in front of him to slow his momentum, then you see that quick decision making off the catch, taking one dribble into a spin across the lane as he goes to a little running hook with the soft touch. And when his own defender isn't able to recover in time, drawing an extra body to the play, I'm pretty sure you know how that goes. That means the answer is to find a way to cut off his roll before he ever touches the ball, right? Well, that would help if he wasn't capable of just stopping at the free throw line for one of those 60% mid-range jumpers. Because he's also such an efficient outside shooter, after screening, it's not just the roll you have to worry about, but the pop. And that space better get closed right away, or he's stepping into 3 points. Not too quickly though, because you don't want to get caught on an over-aggressive closeout, or he'll just fake the jumper and turn it into a dribble drive, galloping his way to the cup for easy buckets. Despite not having any sort of burst at all, he's actually amazing at attacking closeouts out in space like this, and that's because of 2 key traits. First is his shot fake. You never actually know whether he's looking to shoot it or not. And second is his ability to quickly change speeds. It doesn't take an explosive first step to know the timing and footwork needed to accelerate at a high level. It's not just the speeding up aspect of changing pace that Jokic has down, but also the inverse, slowing down, and that really helps him generate finishing angles around the rim. Defenders have to worry about the floater, and he'll weaponize that with some timely strides to set up layups. If he puts the ball down on a drive but isn't able to get by his man with the initial change of speed, then you'll see that strength putting in some serious work, going right into AD's chest and just bullying his way in close for a potential 3-point play. Another thing he'll do if he's cut off is blend that fake and drive directly into a post-up, and we've already gone over the ins and outs that makes this area of his arsenal so tough to stop. Just like the post game, he blends power and finesse beautifully while attacking downhill. Like I said, he's comfortable initiating or playing through contact. It's the same thing when operating with a live dribble. This time when he drives down the middle, Gobert slides right in front of him, so he uses his off shoulder as a shield to throw off Gobert's balance while counter spinning to his left and finishing around the 3-time Defensive Player of the Year with one of those lengthy scoops. Denver is one of those teams that has incorporated dribble handoffs as a major part of their offensive system, and this not only unlocks Jokic as a screener, but because of the driving, he's a threat to keep the ball, rejecting the action and forcing the issue himself. He can even set up ball screen action as the ball handler, where he's a threat to step into pull-up threes if given space, but he can also turn the corner and attack mismatches with that downhill game, so slowing down his scoring with that extra roadblock is already tough enough. And if the defense tosses out a more aggressive coverage or just fails to execute with 100% success, that then unlocks his live dribble passing. All that's to say, there's no coverage that works against Jokic on or off the ball. And when Miami turned to a zone in the NBA Finals, well, he carved that up as well. Remember when I said that he could generate layup type efficiency from as far out as 10 feet and how that stresses defenses? Well, that impact is felt more than ever when he gets the ball in the middle of the floor against a zone, because rim protectors have to pick between the worst of both worlds. If they decide to step up and take away that floater, good luck stopping a cutter from 2 free points. The best way to describe Joker's offensive game is that he is an entire offense himself. One of those rare guys who you could surround with any collection of players, and you're pretty much guaranteed to be at worst a top 10 offense. But in addition to that, the blend of on and off ball talent allows him to synergize with other creators, scorers, and higher end talent. So you reach these offensive heights that might just be higher than anyone else. For starters, Jokic's 2023 season was the most efficient 24 point per game scorer ever, and it's not even close. If you take a look at the top 10, you'll find names like Stoudemire, Jokic himself, Barkley, Durant, Steph, and they all fall within the 65.5 to 68 range. It's not until you jump over the 70% mark that you find Joker's 2023 campaign. His true shooting percentage was 12.3 points better than the league's average, and what stands out when I look at this list of names is that none of these guys were simultaneously the best passer in the NBA, giving you 10 assists. This dude is a freak. That's probably why the Nuggets had a 126.1 offensive rating with Jokic on the floor and fell to 106 with him off. Do you know how insane this is? Just for reference, the iconic, unguardable 2017 Warriors had a 124.6 offensive rating with all 4 members of the Big Four on the floor at the same time. The Nuggets with Jokic in the game are producing offensive heights we've truly never seen before. You could make the argument that Jokic is both the best scorer and playmaker in the NBA right now. Also happens to have an elite off-ball game and boosts spacing in a way that only NBA history's greatest shooters have done. That brings me to my final point. Not only is Nikola Jokic impossible to guard, we might just be witnessing the greatest offensive peak of all time. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of Jokic. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.